How is it that some people make an absolute killing from buying property from auction and other people make a loss? I've been involved with hundreds of property deals, and although auctions have not been my favorite place to buy properties, I cannot ignore them. Myself, my students and my investors have bought a fair share of property deals over the years from auction, and in this video I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide on how you can win at auction too. But before we do that, let's share with you how you lose at auction. See, the reality is most people buy from auction, see homes under the hammer, they see these big wins on homes under the hammer and think this is the place you get started at as a property investor. A lot of people think this is where every property investor buys from, although as I said, many people do. The perception from buying from auction is high for amateurs, and exactly that. I was an amateur. The first property I ever bought, I lost hundreds of thousands of pounds in actual money and lost earnings, and it was because I didn't know what I was doing. And this is why it's very difficult in auctions a lot of the time, because a lot of people will come into an auction not understanding how to run the numbers correctly, what the fees are associated with it, and bid emotionally. I was guilty of this, and even fall proud to some auctioneer tricks that should be illegal but are very much legal. I'm going to tell you about those later on in the video because I fell proud to that exact trick, and it makes the auction rooms a very hard place to compete when you're competing with people that don't understand how to run their numbers correctly. So this is by and large is the biggest reason a lot of people don't make money in auctions, because they're bidding against people that bid up the properties, and a lot of people just don't know what they're doing in there. But we're going to correct this in this video. We're going to show you exactly how you navigate these auctions so you do know what you're doing, so you win bigger auctions. So lesson number one, know when it's a seller's or a buyer's market. See where we are in the economic cycle, because there's different times and different strategies that you buy from auctions in. How do I mean? I've been in the property game since 2009. As I said, been involved with hundreds of deals, and I haven't seen such a hyper selling market as I did in 2021, 2022, when we was in the height of COVID. And basically warehouses getting snapped up and it was a real seller's market. Auction properties were going overpriced. Take Andrea, one of my students in 2021. She was literally buying properties that needed work to them, not even cheap, off of Rightmove, then placed them straight into the auction. And because it's such a buying frenzy and people was going online not knowing what they was doing, not understanding how to run the numbers correctly, they was just looking at these properties that needed work thinking these are a do-up, I can earn money from it, because everybody in COVID was sitting online thinking I want to be a property investor. But this is not just a COVID time, this is any time that you've got a market that's really buoyant. You end up getting lots of people in the auctions overbidding, and a lot of homeowners end up going into the auctions because it was so difficult to buy property. When properties were coming on the market with estate agents, you was getting like 20, 30, 40 viewings booked in that first day. So auctions was really hot. So understanding then is not a great time to buy from auctions. So you've got to be a lot more cautious. Where now, where we're sitting at time of recording this, the market's a bit stagnant. Interest rates are higher. People can't sell so easy. People are uncertain about the market. Loads of headlines in the market talking about, is the property market going to crash? So now properties are a little bit harder to sell in auction, and properties in general over the overall market are harder to sell. It's becoming a buyer's market. So now is a really good time to buy in auction, especially where we come off the back of that seller's market, and loads of agents was putting properties into auction knowing that they would get a guaranteed sale and they would get a higher fee for it. But because agents get half of the auctioneer fee, which is typically around 6k, more than they would, especially on low value properties, had they sold the property just on the open market. So lots of agents throughout COVID got comfortable putting these properties into auction, earning higher fees, and then they carried on doing that when the market shifted and not so many people was buying. So there's lots more auction properties that wasn't selling. Lesson number two, read all the special conditions and get the legal packs read by a solicitor. Don't use your normal conveyancing solicitor to read the legal pack, because often they will charge you a fortune for this. If you're going to use them for the conveyancing, sometimes they might do it at a reduced fee, but you can go on places like Upwork, find lots of solicitors that do this as a side hustle, and they will do it for around £100, £150. Make sure you get them legal packs read, because there's lots of fees in there that often the amateur eye will miss. Even if you read them yourself, there's lots of legal jargon that you don't fully understand. So go through and read the legal packs correctly. You could put it into something like ChatGPT and AI, but it's not super reliable yet, but it still can pull out some of the information. Lesson number three, do not go and do viewings of these properties. Do an online analysis. This is whether you're buying from auction or buying from Rightmove or buying from a direct to vendor advert. You want to do an online analysis first, because you don't know if you're going to win this property or you're going to buy this property. So run over the numbers. Use the software like Landlord to go over the numbers. Find the comparables on the sites like Landlord. You can watch this video here and this gives you a deep dive how to use Landlord. But use a software like that to do the numbers first. Try and figure out what the refurb cost is of the property, just looking at all the photos before you go and view the property. Make sure you go overboard on what your estimated costs are going to be on refurb, so then you have more of a pleasant surprise than an unpleasant surprise. And when you're doing the numbers, make sure you're adding all the costs. Again, another good thing with Landlord is it calculates your bridging costs and your borrowing costs and all the holding costs associated with it. So make sure you add all those in, your brokerage costs, your arrangement fees, the whole cost involved, because many people miss this out. Lesson number 4, then do the viewing. Once you've run the numbers and you know it can be done, either do the viewing yourself or get somebody to do the viewing on your behalf. You can get a builder to do this. You can use companies like View, but I invest remotely 250 miles away, so I don't always have to be going to do these viewings myself. And you shouldn't even be doing these viewings yourself even if you live locally all the time, because it's not always a good use of your time. At that stage, you can then verify your online analysis to make sure you know this is worth bidding on. Lesson number 5, a survey. Do you get a survey or do you not get a survey? So in my personal experience, some properties you would want to, and some properties you could take that risk, but use that, like, only take that risk if you're willing to take that risk and willing to take the consequences of that risk if the worst case scenario happens. And what do I mean? It might have some structural or some problems with the property. So you pay a surveyor, but surveyor reports are not cheap. 500, maybe £1,000 if they're structural ones. I usually take a judgment on this depending on, you can send the builder out. I usually take a judgment on this after the viewing, because if there's signs of cracks and signs of movement in the property or structural problems, then I'm definitely going to want to get a survey on it. But please do not do what I do. If you feel risk averse, that money's worth spending. But remember, if you spend the money on reading the legal packs and the survey before the auction, and you don't win it, you can't claim that money back. But that said, it could be money well spent if you spot something and avoid a really dud property with major structural problems. So my advice is, if you're not as experienced, get the survey done. Lesson number 6, negotiate a longer exchange time. Most auctions will want you to exchange within 28 days. This is really tight. Even if you've got bridging lending or cash, it still leaves a tight window to do this. So always negotiate a 56-day extension on that. Every time I buy from auction, when I know I want to bid on this property, I just go to whoever's the auctioneer or the agent dealing with it, say, hey, I'm happy to bid on it as long as the vendor's happy to extend it to 56 days, just to give us a bit of breathing room. We can potentially do it in 28, but we just want that breathing room. The reality is, if you go over the days of this, then they start fining you, or they can pull away and keep your deposit and stuff like this. We had a property that I was buying myself, and the actual bridgers were slow. And we had a 56-day on this as well. And we went over by weeks, and they was charging us interest by the day on that property. So be very, very careful to make sure you've got enough time to complete on these. Lesson number 7, make sure you line up your finances before you actually start bidding on this. Speak to your broker if you've got a broker. Make sure your cash is in place. Make sure everything's ready, because the minute that hammer goes down and you win this property, they will expect a 10% deposit from you. And as I said, the clock is ticking against you, because you've only got like 28, 56 days to complete on this. Lesson number 8, when you're bidding on the property. So you're going to either be bidding online or you're going to be bidding in the room. But there's a couple of little tricks like I mentioned at the start. So I bought this property as my first property, and this is a legal thing that really should be illegal by auctioneers. They're allowed to do a thing called dummy bids, where they bid bids off the walls, they call it, or off the chandelier. In my example, this piece of land that I'm showing you here, it come up for auction. They went 31, 30, 29, yes, 29, 29 and a half, 30. And as they said 30, I went like that, put my hand up. Before I even got my hand up, boom, the hammer was down, it's yours. And I had to put a 10% deposit down there and then. I found that later when I resold that piece of land at a massive loss, that auctioneer actually done dummy bids. And I learned this as I got more experience about these dummy bids, but he actually confirmed it to me. When I resold it, the same auctioneer sold it for me, and he was like, I remember that piece of land. It was a difficult one to sell because it had issues, blah, blah, blah. Unexperienced person going into the room, buying without knowing my full facts and my full numbers. And he went, yeah, I remember before. What we done before is we'll get the room going if we can't, and we'll get a few bids off the wall, and surely we'll try and get this sold. And I was like, that's what you've done to me. But remember, they can legally do this. Also online, other property here that we bought, and ultimately what happened is I won the bid, it stopped. And then the auctioneer phoned me up and went, sorry, it didn't go through correctly. Somebody bid an extra bit of money and so I had to rebid. How I know this happened is because I posted on my social media, hey, who wants to work with us on this project once I'd won this? And then the guy that was the underbidder of me reached out to me, went, oh, I was the underbidder on that. They actually phoned me up. I thought you'd won it. They actually phoned me up. I actually made an extra bid. So I knew it was sneaky, but what can I do about it? And the time and energy trying to chase it up wasn't worth chasing it. But be aware, auctioneers do play these tricks. And the other thing when bidding, make sure you get your maximum amount and don't go over that. Don't get emotionally tied into a little battle of egos trying to beat that other person. Once you hit your max number, to stop there. And always remember as well, post or pre-bids a really good place to do it. One of the tricks I do pre-bidding is if a property's up for sale and I can get some information around it that there's not been a lot of viewings, that's if you get on with the auctioneer. What I'll do is on the day that's going to auction, very last minute, I will go about an hour before the auction or 2 hours before the auction, I will put a bid in and say that this is subject to before auction. I'm not guaranteeing I will match that bid if the bidding doesn't reach that. If it doesn't reach that in the room, I'm not necessarily going to like come back up to that bid. So what happens with this is some people get last minute nerves and accept it. Got quite a few offers this way and it's great. Also remember post auction, if it doesn't win, they are a bit more motivated and you can go and negotiate after the auction if it didn't get a bid in the room. Lesson number 9, once you've won the auction, remember you need to pay 10% there and then, and that money's non-refundable. You are committed at that point. They take the money straight off of you. Instruct your power team instantly. Speed is key because ultimately you've got that time clock of being able to complete in that time period. Lesson number 2, try to negotiate a key undertaking as soon as the hammer's gone down because you are legally buying to buy that property unless you want to lose your 10%. So what I done on this particular property was I negotiated a key undertaking and we started the rip out straight away. Also make sure that you get all your building costs and everything lined up and get your builder lined up. Really just before the auction, you want to let your builder know you're bidding on this and let them know the completion date so you can get a space in their diary. You do not want to be pedaling backwards trying to find a builder, especially if you're going to be using bridging finance, because obviously there's time cost of that property sitting there, you'll be paying interest. But even if you're putting cash in now, there is an opportunity cost of leaving your money in that deal. So as I said, auction's not been my favorite place to buy, but as a deal sourcer for years, as a property investor for years, and guiding my students for years, it's something you just can't ignore because there's far too many good deals that go into auction. Make sure to watch this next video if you want to learn how to earn money from deal sourcing, and give this page a subscribe and a like if you're still here.